A live look outside. We had a gorgeous warm day today, and it's only going to get warmer as the week goes on. We're going to hit 30 degrees and even higher by the weekend. Colette Kennedy will join us later tonight with the full weather forecast. Good evening, I'm Katerina Georgieva. Chris Ensing is on a special assignment working on a story that we'll bring you later this week. We start tonight with a big change to the province's vaccination rollout. If you're 18 plus, you'll now be able to get your COVID-19 shot. This eligibility expansion comes a week ahead of schedule. It all starts tomorrow at 9:30 in the morning here in Windsor, Essex. The health unit says it's looking at opening up eligibility even further to those 16 and older who are essential workers, and they'll have more on that tomorrow. So far, 59.7% of adults in the region have had at least one dose of the vaccine. The health unit says about 3,000 people a day are getting vaccinated here. And there was a pop-up today in Windsor's West End for those 18 and older. The health unit says as more pop-ups happen, there's something to keep in mind.
Lastly, I want to caution people attending the pop-up clinics in the region. It has come to my attention that some individuals who received the AstraZeneca vaccine and are going to pop-up clinics to receive a Pfizer or Moderna vaccine. I want to remind all those people to wait until we address the second dose issue for AstraZeneca vaccine. Right now, the mixing and matching of these vaccines are not yet recommended based on the limited studies that data that we have seen. We are anticipating some guidelines that will come in later this month or early next month regarding mixing and matching of these vaccines.
If you don't want to be stuck eating at home during the stay-at-home order, how about in your car? A restaurant in LaSalle is giving people a way to enjoy all they can eat while they park. Jacob Barker has more.
Chowing down on some sushi in the comfort of an F-150. Want some more? Just text and they'll bring it out. Getting all you can eat is no longer a distant memory at Kona Sushi in LaSalle.
We haven't had all you could eat sushi, like he said, in a while, so just the fact that we could get out here and have all you could eat is something special.
The restaurant says it's more popular than ever, with a limited number of seats and 7 days a week. At certain hours, the spots fill up fast.
They're just loving it. They're so grateful that there's something to do. With COVID and everything, it's been very tough for everybody, and yeah, people are just enjoying it so much.
And like everything during the pandemic, it does come along with some rules people have to get used to.
And we're making sure everybody's still staying within their car. You're not allowed to pull up your lawn chair and sit out in front of your car and that kind of stuff. But people make the most of it, right?
I think it's a good concept. I wish we can get out of the cars, but it does make sense to keep control and maintain the service.
But still, you can get your dynamite roll and then get as many more as you want. For these guys, it's worth it.
You can't eat out anywhere, so just the fact that we could get out here, it's really nice. They're doing it right.
While the restaurant says it is safe and that it is following health and safety requirements required during the pandemic, when asked today, the health unit says it's a bit of a gray zone.
I've asked my team to take a look at the regulations to make sure that they are in compliance. So far, they haven't raised any flag, but we'll continue to look into it.
But while that's being ironed out, the appetite for sushi here is large, and people just want the sushi to keep rolling. Jacob Barker, CBC News, LaSalle.
This news will make a lot of kids and parents happy. At a mass vaccination clinic yesterday, Premier Doug Ford says summer camps will be open this year.
I have to say one thing about the summer camps. July 3rd is usually the time they open. They're opening up this year because of the great work that these people are doing.
Earlier this week, a group of 1,500 Ontario pediatricians wrote a letter asking children's camps be allowed to reopen, but not all healthcare workers agree. Some say vaccination rates are just one metric, and opening up too early could lead to a possible fourth wave. The Premier's office says a reopening plan is in the works, and more information will be made available in the coming weeks. Windsor's mayor is calling for looser restrictions at border crossings.
I was in Michigan looking at coming over to Ontario. The restaurants are still closed. The casino is closed. A number of things that are normally open just aren't open here right now. So that would necessarily limit the number of people who would decide to cross from Michigan into Ontario. But I think the benefit here is allowing families to reunify in some way.
Dilkins crossed the border with his son last month for a medical appointment, and he says he'll do it again if he has to, adding after nearly 14 months of allowing only essential travelers to get through, it's time to allow access for people who can prove they've had both their COVID-19 shots. Local and provincial officials continue to push for a border reopening plan. That decision is controlled by the federal government. If you've been out driving around Essex County, you may have noticed bright yellow fields. That's winter canola, a crop commonly used for canola or vegetable oil. It's seeing rising interest from Ontario farmers. CBC's Jen LaGrassa has more.
Harrow farmer Scott McLean is growing fields of gold. His winter canola plants are in full bloom. The flowers sit atop the 5-foot crop, which has seen increased interest from Ontario farmers, specifically in the southwestern region.
It's a pretty crop to look at, and hopefully it looks pretty when it comes through the combine in July.
But it's more than just a pretty crop. This year, winter canola is selling for double what it was last year.
The canola price has been quite volatile with the rest of the commodities. So last year it was around $500 a ton, and this year it's in the $900 to $1,000 a ton. And there's been a big demand for vegetable oil, and a lot of that has to do with biodiesel. And there's also been a shortage of rapeseed, which is like a sister crop to canola.
One expert says the growing interest stems from a new strain that was brought in, which is more resilient in this climate.
Historically, there has been winter canola production in Chatham, Kent, and Essex, but I think it was just older genetics, and we weren't having as much success at it surviving the winter.
The plant also allows farmers to double crop their fields, so the harvest is so early in the year that the same field can then be used to plant another crop before the end of the season. McLean says the crop is good for his soil and his pocketbook, but it's also good for Instagram.
For sure, when you see a big field of gold, I mean, it's a really, people show a lot of appreciation, a lot of intrigue in local agriculture. People are definitely embracing. I know I see on various streams of social media that people really get excited to get their selfies out there and Instagrams.
I already got my selfie, and you better get yours soon. The flowers will only be around for about another week. The plant will soon turn straw-like and leave behind black seeds. Those will be harvested in July. Jennifer LaGrassa, CBC News, Harrow.
We are one step closer to having red light cameras installed in Windsor. This afternoon, City Council authorized some agreements with the Ministry of Transportation. So far, the city has approved the installation of 10 red light cameras in different locations in the city. The cost of the program is less than $50,000. The cameras will only trigger if a car enters the intersection when the light is red. But if it stops without going through the intersection, a ticket will not be issued. Cars waiting in an intersection to turn also won't be ticketed if the light turns red before they can turn. The city expects to have the lights in place sometime this summer. And an update on mask rules on transit Windsor buses. If you say you can't wear one because of a medical condition, you still won't be able to take a bus ride. That's because Employment and Social Development Canada gave a directive that says everyone riding must wear a mask. Transit Windsor tried to appeal this. That directive came last January after 2 bus drivers refused to work. They said their health was in danger if people weren't wearing a mask. The Canada Industrial Relations Board ruled in their favor in March. City Council received that report today. Now, the town council meeting in the town of Essex will soon be starting up. You can see that YouTube video. It is officially in session there. A big item on tonight's agenda, the Integrity Commissioner's report on Councillor Chris Vanderdolen's racist tweets referring to COVID-19 as the Chinese flu. He had received 80 formal complaints about this, and he recommends Vanderdolen apologizes, deletes the tweet, and goes through diversity and inclusion training. Now it's up to council to decide what happens next. A number of letters were included in the report from concerned citizens about the impact the words have had on the Asian community. I spoke with the writer of one of those letters in advance of tonight's meeting.
For me personally, I think it just came about with the ramping up of violence across large cities in America, just a large amount of violence and racism towards Asian individuals in particular. Like me personally, I know a couple of friends who have not only been verbally assaulted, but physically assaulted as well, for looking the way they do in relation to COVID. And again, it kind of just elicited a very emotional response in me when I seen someone who is an elected official saying these kind of things. And in my mind, and maybe unfairly so, I was assuming he didn't want to listen to us, but I think that is an assumption I don't want to make. I want to assume he wants to listen. So it's definitely very scary for a lot of people in our community.
And so tonight, this report is going to council. They're going to be discussing it. What do you hope comes of the conversation, and what decisions do you hope come out of it?
I hope Mr. Vander Doylen realizes that none of us are trying to attack his right to free speech. None of us are trying to silence him, like I think he was saying in previous reports. The only thing we want to do is for him to empathize with us. Because at the end of the day, he's free to have his bias and personal opinions towards the Chinese government, but his fight isn't with China. His fight's not overseas. His fight is here in our communities. And it's about protecting the individuals in his community who voted for him and trust him and believe in him to stand by our rights. And I hope that upon reading all the thousands of or hundreds of emails that went in, I'm sure, and just listening to everybody, that hopefully he'll have a change of heart. And I don't expect it to be something that happens overnight, but I hope he says, I apologize. I don't understand your plight, but I would like to. I would really like to try my best to understand. And that's really, I think, the best thing that can come out of this.
A group of Windsorites are trying to revitalize alleys in the city, looking to create positive change and bring communities together through safe and movable alleyways. CBC Windsor host Chris Ensing went for a walk with Fraser Fathers to see what changes they're hoping to make.
These spaces can be transformed in ways that make them positive community anchors, while at the same time we have to be realistic and say not all 150 kilometers are going to actually be able to do that. So it's about actually targeting alleys of opportunity and then using those alleys to then drive broader change and connect amenities like Bruce Park to Mitchell Park, which is on the same alley about 500 or so meters that way, or half a kilometer that way. You know, it's another revitalized park.
We sometimes might look at Whiff Alleyway, look at Maiden Lane. We look at some of the art that's been thrown in, and we talk about lights a lot. But to really approach this from a movable city kind of zone, do you know what needs to take place for something like that idea to really move forward?
Well, it is basic infrastructure to start with. You know, arts, having a good paved space, an accessible space that, you know, if there's giant potholes, it's not a good space to necessarily use. Yeah. It has to be lit at night. Like this section of the alley, you look up, you have lights all along here because the park's here. But you go a few blocks that way, the lights go away. You go a few blocks that way, the lights become more sporadic. And so it's about how do you build that connectivity in this space. And so it starts with basic infrastructure, but then it's talk about planning around these spaces. So, you know, the perceptions are based in reality in many ways. You know, there are, you know, you do see stuff dumped down here. You do see, you know, rats and other, you know, drug paraphernalia, unfortunately, sometimes found in these alleyways. Across the city, by my count, there are approximately 43 alleyways or 43 organizations or buildings which are either municipally owned, they're schools, they're churches, they're community groups that are directly adjacent to alleyways. And so there's an opportunity there where you can create ownership, where if a school, you know, was able to take over the alleyway right next to it, suddenly like a space like this for a school is a 100-meter racetrack. You know, there's an opportunity to re-envision what that alleyway space is. You close the alley to cars, of course, but now suddenly the schoolyard has a racetrack next to it where they can do whatever they need to do. Revitalized alleys actually improve property values, right? So it's like if you have an alley, like I'm willing to bet, despite housing being crazy, you know, all over the place, you know, when this alley got redone and this park got redone, this neighborhood property values went up probably more than they would have otherwise.
Another live look at our city there, the Ambassador Bridge, just a beautiful sunshiny day today. I hope you got to enjoy it and get outside. Colette Kennedy will join us after the break with your full weather forecast. A new round of airstrikes hit the Gaza Strip as fighting between Israel and militant Palestinians rolled into a second week. Israel's military says it has targeted buildings and tunnels used by militants, but calls for a ceasefire are intensifying as the ongoing fighting continues to claim civilian lives on the two sides. Gaza health officials say more than 200 Palestinians have been killed, with some 1,300 others wounded. And in Israel, at least 10 people have been killed in rocket attacks in 7 days. Freelance reporter Iris Mackler has more.
Searching through the rubble for survivors in Gaza. Working with very basic equipment, there aren't many happy moments like this one, when a 6-year-old girl was pulled out alive late last night. Susie Eshkutana's mother and siblings were killed in the strike. But at the hospital, she was reunited with her father Riyad, who was also injured.
I was filled with all the anger in the universe, but when I heard that one of my daughters was alive, I said thank God, because this girl might capture some, even a little, of my other daughter's smiles.
An Israeli missile strike on this car in the Gaza Strip caused the death of Hussam Abu Harbid, a military commander in the Islamic Jihad militant group. His death, later confirmed by the group, led to a barrage of rocket fire into southern Israel, lasting hours. Israel's anti-missile defence system, the Iron Dome, intercepted most but not all of the rockets.
We were alerted that a rocket fell and I came to the scene. 2 days ago it fell next to my house and it did massive damage. Windows and shutters were broken.
Israel says this massive series of airstrikes, which lit up the sky overnight, were targeting a network of underground tunnels built by Hamas to build and store weapons. But there were also civilian casualties. And Gaza's power company says these strikes have also impacted the power supply. It says transmission lines are down and fuel for backup generators is running low. It's calling for more fuel imports before the lights go out. International diplomatic efforts for a ceasefire continue.
Our effort is to contribute with our efforts, diplomatic efforts first of all, working with partners to stop the escalation, to stop the violence, because the only ones who are paying the highest price for it are mostly civilians on both sides.
The immediate focus is to give civilians on both sides some respite before a permanent ceasefire can go into effect. For CBC News, I'm Iris Mackler in Jerusalem.
The Toronto Raptors season has officially come to an end, and head coach Nick Nurse says although it was a disappointing season, he doesn't fully blame the team.
We were playing pretty good basketball until the COVID hit, and we kind of spun out of control from there and never really recovered.
Nurse adds he's very hopeful the team will start the next season in Toronto, but things are still up in the air. Once the team does come back home, it might look a little different. Kyle Lowry is now an unrestricted free agent, and there have been talks that he may or may not return to the Raptors. The Toronto Raptors finished 12th in the Eastern Conference. Let's bring in Colette Kennedy now. It's been sunny all day, although this is not the sunniest of moments for the Raptors.
No, it's not. And when we try and find at least a silver lining in here from this season, superfan Nav Bhatia got inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame. And there's
so cool.
It is so cool because there's never been a fan inducted before. So, I mean, that is something to celebrate. It means there's hope for all of us. I can't play basketball, but I could potentially get into the Hall of Fame, right? Yeah, no, he's outdone himself, and he certainly deserves that. So really something nice that we can end this season on and hope for better things next season, right? Let's talk about your weather in terms of things heating up, not just the days, but the nights heating up as well. There'll be one exception in my forecast board you're going to see in a moment, but otherwise we're talking about our overnight lows in the double digits, getting a little sticky. Not so much tomorrow. We're going to find towards the end of the week the humidity, as those dew points are going up a little bit, it is going to be building. We'll be talking about humidex values as the temperatures will also be soaring. I'm not just talking 30 degrees, I'm talking a little bit above that. So current temperatures, this is, I know for some, this is just much more comfortable. You don't want to hear about those 30s, so here it is for you this evening that you can still enjoy this 23 degrees, 22 there, Chatham, Kent. And, you know, just a little bit of light cloud tries to build in kind of in the afternoon hours, and we sort of see this trend. We clear tonight, tomorrow start off with sun, and then some high level cloud, a little bit of thin cloud is possible to be coming in again into those later afternoon and early evening hours, and then things kind of calm down. Now, as we get into Thursday or closer to it, late Wednesday into Thursday, we'll start to see more cloud cover coming in. But even with this next system, most of that energy is going to go to the north over the upper Great Lakes, and that's where rain is more expected. So we've got a few dry days ahead here. Overnight, there it is. London, the exception, 9 degrees, a single digit. Otherwise, look at those overnight lows. So mild daytime highs tomorrow, getting, a little bit above those mid-20s. Wednesday, 27, a little more cloud cover, like I said, through these 2 days through midweek. Humidity goes up, and we'll see those temperatures going into the low 30s as we head towards what I believe is a holiday weekend.
That's right. Honestly, looking at those numbers, it makes me kind of, I'm already sweating.
Yeah, it's like, wait a minute, what month is this? Oh, yeah, May.
I know. I love it. I love the heat. Thank you, Colette.
Yeah, you're welcome, Kat.
Now, when we come back, we'll tell you about a young artist from the Maritimes. His work is so popular, he's getting sell requests from around the globe. Stay with us. Britain is starting to open up after another long lockdown. Just about everyone is relieved to see pubs, theaters, and other public gathering spots getting back to business. But there are concerns about COVID variants, particularly the one first detected in India.
It does seem a bit risky, but I guess everyone's very desperate to get back out and socialise again.
The British government says it is accelerating its COVID-19 vaccination program to try to contain the variant. It warns that Britain's reopening could be knocked off track if the variant spreads. Care home residents will be allowed to have 5 visitors, and face coverings will no longer be mandatory in schools. Like many people, 12-year-old Carter Noseworthy tried his hand at something new during the pandemic. And after some practice and a few posts on Instagram, people from all over the world are buying his depictions of Halifax.
When I started watercolor, I didn't think I'd be that good, but knowing that people are actually wanting to buy my pieces makes me feel pretty happy that I'm actually out there and they think that I'm doing pretty good. So it's going to make me feel pretty good that it's in their houses.
Noseworthy says he's tried a few different art forms, but watercolor has now easily become his favorite. He says he's developed a keen interest in drawing older maritime buildings and hopes to one day become an architect. And breaking news now, the yearly fireworks show on the Detroit River will again be available on broadcast only. The parade company and Ford Motor Company have announced the 2021 fireworks show will air Monday, June 28th. That airs on NBC Detroit. The news release says it again will not take place in the traditional location of downtown Detroit, but it expects to return to that spot next year. That is it for CBC Windsor News. For news anytime, you can go to cbc.ca/Windsor. Have a great night.